I still go down the rabbit holes. I still do. I still get distracted. I feel like, honestly, it really comes down to self awareness. Like if I do find myself, I'm going on to social media to figure out what I'm going to post or doing market research or whatever it is. And then I just start going through people's stories or I start watching reels. I just become like hyper aware now when I'm doing that and I just stop. I exit the app. Putting those timers on are really helpful. I tried to do it for 5 minutes, up it to like 15, 20 minutes because to start at that point, I think is more realistic. And once those timers go off, it basically shuts you out of the app and you're like training your brain to not spend as much time on as scrolling, essentially.
Caskia, thank you
Hello.
for coming on. Welcome to the show. It's been a
Thank you
while.
for me. I know. Long time.
Yeah, it's crazy. We were just talking a little bit too about how we both have kids now and college days, and here we are, like full grown adults. It's pretty wild.
Yeah. And we're far away now. You're like way far away in Hawaii.
Well, I'm actually currently not there. So we came back we have a winter rental right now up in Bradley Beach, actually.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so we're here for 7 months, but yeah, we've just got some big news that I could announce to the podcast audience as well, that we're going to be going down to Florida in like a month and a half or like a month. But yeah, Haley, braved the Northeast winter after living in the tropics for years. And she was like, absolutely not. It's not happening.
No, I was gonna say you guys are gonna be back in the warm weather. I have friends and family there right now in Florida. They said it's a little chilly, but at least it's
Yeah.
warmer than here. Well, at least for me in Jersey, like freezing. We got snow this morning, so I'm over it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been pretty damn cold, to say the least. It was a shock for sure to
Yeah.
come back to like a real winter, but hey, tried it out. We wanted to be closer to family with the little one and all,
Yeah.
which, it was good to at least spend the last 4 months here, but we gotta keep on going.
Yeah. Do you have family in Florida? This is turning into me interviewing you, I think.
Hey, it is what it is. We said anywhere it goes,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
I do have family in Florida, but my parents and Haley's parents are all up here. So, yeah, it was good, at least for the interim, but hopefully we could just convince everybody to get down there and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
Nothing's forever.
Yeah. Totally.
Well, so what's going on in Cassia's life? How is everything and what are you up to as far as endeavors and personal ventures? Because I feel like you always got something new going on. So if you wouldn't mind just sharing that stuff and where you're at with all that.
Yeah, I really do. I feel like one thing people always say to me is like, "What are you doing now?" Like, "What are you doing?" It's always been, I want to say probably since high school. Like, "What's going on? Like, what are you doing? Where are you working? What business are you starting?" Like, I've always had my hands in a lot of different pots, I feel like. Um, but right now I'm a concierge. So actually a few years ago I started as a concierge at another hotel, which then like sparked my concierge business that I started after I left that hotel. And now I'm a concierge again at another hotel. So I think that that's like been pretty a constant in my life. And even in between when I wasn't doing concierge stuff for my like town, I still was in a way. Like I was always recommending different places or giving suggestions to people visiting, friends, family, strangers. People would call me and put me on the phone with somebody else. Like, just ask her, what you want to do or like what restaurants you want to go to. And yeah, so I'm doing that right now. So that's full time. I have my son who's 2.5. So he's in daycare, which is hard, but necessary. So that I was home with him like his first, basically like almost his first year of life. So I think going from working a lot or like being like full time in the workforce to like being home with the baby and then jumping back into it was really difficult. But now I think I'm getting back into the swing of things. Like we're finally on a schedule and I'm sure like that might change. You never know with kids, but So I'm doing that, and then I have my planner company, which I designed a line of daily planners, like agendas, basically. They're little vegan leather books, 6 ring, so you can customize the interiors. So I'm doing that. So I have like a little shelf of them behind me. But
Cool.
like a side hustle really for right now. And if it grows, it grows. If it stays how it is now, like I'm also fine with that. It's just like having something to keep me creative has always been like really important for me. So yeah.
Yeah. Now, are you still doing? I know for a little while you had kind of like freelance marketing services that you were doing for a bit.
Yep,
You
still
still?
doing that, still doing that. I really that's another great, like, creative outlet. So I went to high school for graphic design. It was a trade school, so I went for that. I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I got to college, which is why where we met at college, I went for business because I figured, when I did figure that out, like, figured out what I wanted to do in life, at least I would have a business degree behind me to turn whatever that was into hopefully a good business. Um, but yeah, I don't know that I ever really found out what I love to do, aside from talking to people and trying to stay creative as often as I can. So like, I feel like that has a lot to do with why I always find myself doing something new. But the freelance marketing, like web design, logo design, helping people to start up their business, or businesses, new businesses, mostly small or local, a lot of local small companies. But yeah, it's just really exciting to like see my work go far with another company that's like continuing to grow, or like years down the line, you see like the original logo, which most people change their logos over time as the businesses evolve. But when I see like my work still there, it's like definitely like that's a proud moment for me for sure.
Yeah, that's the one thing I feel like that I've always noticed, and the years that when we first met each other to up to now, really, is your like just brand is on point. Like you have awesome graphics and everything is just always like really cool looking.
Yeah.
And then no matter how hard I try to do that on my own, it's not innate. Some
Well, if you
people are
ever
born
need
for it.
any help, I'm totally down to help. Actually, like a huge part of why I even started to do the freelance marketing more frequently is because I noticed that like a lot of the people down here were getting quotes for prices that were like astronomical or like way out of budget. Especially from where I am, the cost of living's pretty high because I live in like a tourist beach town. Um, so I knew from firsthand that like a lot of the locals here can't afford to spend like 2 grand on a website or, $1,000 on a logo. So like I started to just help people. Like I wasn't even charging at that rate. I just wanted to help because I knew firsthand, like I spent close to $2,000 on my first website because I didn't really know. But, it was a great website. It worked and everything. But then I realized I could do the same thing for basically nothing. So
If I could extract some valuable marketing design insight from you for listeners for this episode, that would be amazing.
yeah,
Like, what are some things for people that might be listening that just really want to start something, any type of like personal brand or business or whatever it is? What is one thing that like, you recommend is a great place to start with that? And what are some things that need to be prioritized when it comes to that and a brand and an image? And yeah, I mean, for somebody that's listening that kind of wants to dive into entrepreneurship for themselves, like where do you start? It's a
yeah.
lot.
I think I hear like more often now, I hear a lot about people saying like, oh, like you don't need a good logo to have a good business, or like you don't need to have a website to have a good business. I think you do, especially right now. People are going to your Instagram profile or your Facebook, or they're Googling you and they want to see something. They want to see who they're working with. They want to get the vibe of the person that they're going to be working with or the business that they're going to buy from. So I think that having a clean, professional looking brand or brand that goes along with, the message that your business is delivering is important. And I think people get stumped on the marketing aspect of it or the branding part because one, they just think, "Oh, I'll never be able to figure this out on my own. Like, I need to just pay someone." Sometimes it is easier that way, but it's also not as difficult as people may think to self-educate in that area. Everything for the most part that I do within marketing is self-taught. I've taken free courses. There's YouTube videos like galore on Canva that you can, if you're not sure how to use Canva, I feel like that's like one of the most popular marketing tools right now. People like, there's like gifts. I follow a bunch of marketing pages on Instagram and there's like, oh, like you say, you do Photoshop or whatever, but your logo is on Canva. But like Canva is great. Like I love Canva and it makes it easier for everyone. So it's like, I think people need to utilize the tools that are there and the ones that are free. Canva has a whole free subscription that you don't have to pay anything. So I think utilizing the information that's out there that's free and reliable, and the businesses and companies that can help you grow your business or start your business and help you market it, like shoot for those first. Like you don't even have to spend hardly any money. Like I think people just don't want to put that time in. They want to keep researching their business, but like you've done all of that for probably months, if not years already. You know what your business needs to do. So putting that time and effort into focusing on how you're going to grow it within the marketing like aspect of it, I think it's scary. People don't want to think about it, but it's not as scary as people think it is. And there's a lot of free resources out there.
Yeah, and you had mentioned too, like researching and market research and all that is so important, but I think the message could get so lost in a confused brand, like we, especially when there's so much out there now when it comes to podcasts, for example, or any type of business, like unless you're absolutely groundbreaking in your field and you're starting something new, like you're going to have competition and the best of the best are going to have the best marketing strategies and the best graphics and all of that stuff. And yeah, I mean, if you're able to just really like zone in on your niche, whatever you want to call it, and just be able to, like you said, use what you have out there. I think that that's the most important. But yeah, if you're not being able to create those things and like do so with heart and with kind of the education of all the stuff that you're like, you do your market research, all the stuff that's going into it. I think being able to do that stuff on your own and like you said, self-educate, like it's going to bring that vision to life. And that's kind of been something that I've always, the occupational therapy business and
Yeah.
podcasts, like bringing that stuff together because I have the vision of what it's going to look like. And
Yeah.
outsourcing is great, but I think especially with like that initial dive in with a brand and with the business, like you really bringing that to life is probably the most important piece.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think too, like people really underestimate like word of mouth, like really heavily underestimate it because even in my town, I've seen word of mouth go further than any print ads, just or networking people that I think it's so easy for people to just like stay in or like stay on their phones, get their information from social media and make their connections there. But I think I think definitely started with COVID, I guess, when all that happened. But I think we're still just going in the direction of just not putting enough effort into like personal connection. And even if you are reaching out to somebody on social media, like send a voice memo, something that's personal, that really like you're showing who you are, you're trying to make a real connection. And then through them, you're going to make other connections. And same thing with the towns that you live in, like go to the coffee shops, talk to people. It's just, I think word of mouth is really, really, really underestimated. Tell people about your products, tell people about what you're doing. And like when you tell them, you're going to be excited and it's going to get them excited too.
And I feel like it's so much easier to stick in somebody's brain too. Like, oh, I met this person and they
Yeah.
talked to me about this versus our brains now are just so programmed to see something or you could pay out the ass for a social media ad and it may be presented to a million people, but how many people are actually going to like sit there and be engaged? And of
Right.
course, it has to do with the quality of something that you're putting out there, but seeing it on a phone, like you said, is so much different than than having a real life conversation. And
Yeah.
we're getting more and more away from the real life conversations and more so just digital everything, digital marketing, digital get your brand out there. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's huge. And the conversations that I've had, like real life conversations with people about, the podcast and the occupational therapy business that I have, those are the people that are most excited about it and will do the marketing for me versus like the people that just come across ads on social media.
Absolutely.
That kind of leads to into my next question that I have for you. Being so involved with social media between obviously like the planner business and the concierge stuff and freelance marketing, how do you balance the almighty social media and just the almighty technology and be able to still stay focused on what you're trying to accomplish? And obviously you do that by, launching so many different things and having like a really solid product and all the things that you do have. But how do you not get sidetracked by just the rabbit holes that you could go down, and how do you just keep your focus on the goals that you have to accomplish?
Sure. Yeah. I'm laughing because I feel like I still go down the rabbit holes. I still do. I still get distracted. Um, I feel like honestly, it's really comes down to like self-awareness. Like if I do find myself I'm going on to social media to figure out what I'm going to post or figure doing market research or whatever it is, and then I just start going through people's stories or I start watching reels, I just I'm like hyper aware now when I'm doing that and I just stop. I exit the app. Putting those timers on are really helpful. I tried to do it for 5 minutes. Stupid. Up it to like 15, 20 minutes because that's, to start at that point, I think is more realistic. And once those timers go off, it basically shuts you out of the app and you're like training your brain basically to not spend as much time on as scrolling essentially. And I think just setting boundaries, like saying no to things, saying no to more things has been something that has really helped me in the past. I want to say like year, especially after having my son, saying no to some opportunities. I've noticed that a lot of the times saying no to things does help. It allows me to focus on other things that are maybe more important or that might move the needle in my business a little bit further. So I think just being able to say no, being more aware, self aware of when you're kind of going off track or asking people to hold you accountable. I've also noticed that working with someone, like co-working basically, going to a cafe and sitting and showing up with like a list of things that I want to get done and I want to accomplish and having somebody there to be like, "Hey, did you finish it? Like, what are you working on?" And having that time. So like really just being, I guess, just working on like your self-discipline. Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. It's so hard. And setting boundaries is the hardest thing to do. Like, especially whether you're working for yourself or you're working for somebody else, having the wherewithal to be like, absolutely not going to answer this call right now and
Yeah.
absolutely not gonna, check my phone with these messages. It's so hard. Like, you're so programmed to be in that state, be in that work state, so involved and so just enthralled in it. And then you need to have to like transition to family life and have to be present for your kid or kids. And it's just so hard. It's like flipping that switch is next to impossible. And the self awareness, I think, is the most important part. Like knowing, I'll know, I'm like, okay, I can feel it inside of me that I'm just in like absolute zoned in work
Yeah.
mode. And if I'm not able to switch that off and be able to be present, like just before this, it's funny that this is coming up, but right before we recorded this, and I'm sitting there and like just like looking into my salad bowl, and Haley's like, "Are you just eating, or are you just thinking about everything that you have to do right now?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm thinking about absolutely everything I have to do right now." And then I'm actually gonna close my eyes and eat for a second, but so hard. But really being aware of that, and like you said too, like having somebody, it doesn't have to be a significant other. It could be anybody just holding you accountable will like catch you and pull you out of
Yeah.
that rabbit hole is
Yeah.
really important.
Absolutely. And I think too, like this past year, really kind of owned owned up to when I'm not being present or not giving somebody my full attention or not following up right away. And that's like in my personal relationships with my family, with my closest friends, and just apologizing for when you're not showing up like 100% for the people that are also giving you that their full attention. And I think that, when you're admitting those things to yourself out loud and apologizing for them, that also adds into your like, it kind of fills that self-awareness cup a little bit more because you're speaking that reality out there into existence, and it's a real thing. And then those people, they're gonna they're gonna feel comfortable enough to do the same, or like even my husband, for example, like to be able to say like, "Hey, you're not really being fully present with me right now. Can I just like have your attention for a minute?" Like being able to get people to understand that you're open to having those conversations and that you understand that sometimes you can drift off or you can lose focus or you're not being present. So I think being really open about that and transparent about that is really, really important.
And having those conversations too in a not confrontational way is even more important because I see it a lot in my own family where certain people might be just kind of coming at other people for like, oh, you're not going to listen. And it's like, okay, it's frustrating. I get that. Like, I totally get that it's frustrating if you're talking and somebody's not there. But again, we are all human and we're going to go down, those trains of thought or whatever it might be. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think the way that you put it, just being kind of gentle with it and like letting them know it's hard to come back at somebody and or like shut down if you word it in a way that's kind of like, hey, like I feel like I'm not really being heard right now or whatever it is. And it's hard to do because
Yeah.
we're always on, full rev as human beings and
You
it's
don't want
hard
to
to
hear it.
take the step.
We don't want to hear those things. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the truth. But hey, we're all just doing our best here, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
With your son too, what are some like practical ways that you are able to also find that presence? Because I feel the the balance and the withdrawing from work things or when your mind's going a million miles an hour thinking about things that you can or can't do with business or work or whatever it might be, like how are some ways that you're able to get down on your son's level or times where you have to? Because I feel like that is kind of a whole different evil between like adults and not an evil or good, but
Yeah.
between adults and kids, like you really have to be present with kids because they can truly, truly feel that if you're not.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And they can also really start to get into things if you're not paying attention.
Oh
So
yeah.
with my son at first, when he was an infant, I was like carrying him. I was in real estate at the time. I'm still in real estate now, actually, but I had stopped. But when I had first had him, I was still in real estate and I was carrying him into showings, like in his car seat carrier. And it was like middle of the summer. I was doing linen rentals and drop offs and through my concierge business. And then I'd jump in the back of my truck, my husband's truck, and feed him, get back in the driver's seat, drive, drop off more linens. He'd be crying. It was a mess. And I felt so horrible. I felt so bad. I was like, what am I doing? Like, I'm carrying this kid everywhere with me. He was meeting a lot of people. He was very well socialized as an infant, which I do think impacted his personality and uh, the way he can socialize with people today. Um, but because I was always go, go, go with him at such a young age, it really made me want to pause and step back and be present with him. So I think stopping everything that I was doing that was taking me away from those moments really made me start to kind of hone in on different ways that I could be present, more present with him. So I did close my concierge business. I wasn't sure if it would be temporary or forever. And I stayed home with him as much as I could. And then I think now that he's going to be 3 this summer, he can, he's a little bit more easy to interact with. So I start to really just kind of involve him in the things that I do. Like if I'm overwhelmed and I still need to like make myself breakfast, I'll try and do it the night before with him. I'll have him help me pour ingredients and like I'll I'll use the things that I need to do or that I would be stressed out that I couldn't do because he was running around. Instead, like I'll invite him to do those things with me. And it really starts to help with his, I've noticed at least recently, his independence. So he looks forward to doing things on his own or he knows how to like pour certain things or mix certain things. And it's really interesting to see because these are just things that I was doing because I also had to do them. I just invited him to do them with me, and it was a bonding experience. And I think, like other ways that I try to be more present with my son is like trying not to be on my phone around him, or if people are calling me, like just texting them like, hey, like I'm not gonna be on my phone for a little while, like I'll call you back, or just not answering and not saying anything at all because, I don't have to explain myself to everybody. If it's my husband or a family member calling me multiple times, that's different. But yeah, just like again, like that self-awareness, like, whoa, I've been on my phone, way too long and he's playing. I need to like get down there and play with him. Like we need to just spend this time together. I have nothing important going on right now. Let me just be with him. So like coming back like kind of full circle to that self-awareness of like the present moment is really important. But yeah, I think the best thing is really involving your kids into like whatever it is that you need to do. I think that's probably my biggest suggestion.
Yeah. And I mean, only 7 months of parenthood so far, but I've noticed also that the basic things, the things that we might view as mundane or whatever, like doing the dishes or whatever, kids are so fascinated by that. You could just put an infant and one of the front facing carriers and just do all those things. And they are absolutely satisfied just watching that. And I find it really tough to see a lot of the times where so many kids are just so glued to electronics at such an early age. And it's just, instilling such a negative habit for the future, but also just their development and growth, like in general, is really suffering a lot of benefits from that. And we've talked about that in other episodes too. But
Mhm.
just like the simplicity of everyday basic tasks is so amazing to kids, and we might overlook it, but yeah, including them in so much, I think is the most important thing you can do really to go off your point because yeah, they're fascinated by it and the
Yeah,
simplicity, the beauty is in the simplicity, really.
it really is. And I think people don't like parents, a lot of parents don't take in the moments like watching their kid try to put toothpaste on their toothbrush for the first time or watching them run their hands underwater, like watching their face. Those tiny little things, it's like amazing. Like, why wouldn't you want to just eat up as many of those moments as possible? Like, you just need to be present for one or two of these tiny little moments, and it'll change everything. Your whole outlook, it'll change everything. You don't want to miss any of that.
Yeah, and it's never too late too, because there might be some parents that are listening that are parents to grown adults or teenagers and thinking like, oh, I wasn't there for that, and I really, really wish I could be there and get those moments back. And the reality is you can't, but the thing you can do is just find the beauty in those little things now. I mean, your kid getting into a car, just
Yeah.
watch them. You might be that creepy parent, just like watching them get behind the wheel, but it's like,
Right.
there's beauty in that too. It's like your little infant is now getting behind the wheel of a car. That's probably the trippiest thing to watch and to see. So yeah,
Oh,
it's important just to keep doing it.
I agree. I totally agree.
Well, the next question I have for you is more so kind of individual with yourself. How is so many of these things that you've done, like business wise and just everything really that you've kind of gone through and all of the endeavors and parenthood too, like how are some ways that that's kind of contributed to your growth as a person, whether that be like emotionally, spiritually, however you want to spin it. But what are some things that over the last 3 years of your son being around or since, starting some of the things that you started, like what are Caskia in this moment today, the things that you could take away and just be like, wow, if it wasn't for that, those things would have never happened and I wouldn't be the person I am today.
That's a really hard question. Um, Honestly, it's a good question, but a hard one nonetheless. I think since becoming a parent, kind of coming back to being present. that also tying in with setting boundaries. I think setting boundaries has been, since my son was born, setting boundaries has been my biggest accomplishment. I was raised and I just grew up as a yes person, a people pleaser. I think that's still definitely a part of my character. Um, but I've become much more aware of it and I've grown a lot out of that. Like I've been um kind of I just have been a little bit more strict with my own personal boundaries with people, with work, with my phone. It's really uncomfortable. Setting boundaries in any way, shape, or form is really uncomfortable, especially when you have to verbalize them. So I think I've gotten comfortable with being uncomfortable, if that makes sense. So it doesn't really take as much out of me before telling somebody, that they made me feel a certain way, or telling somebody that the reason why I'm not going somewhere. It used to take a lot out of me beforehand. Like I would get anxiety, I would feel extremely stressed, I would get super paranoid. But now it's like I'm saying no to something for me. And if it's not for me, I'm saying no to it for my son. And once I kind of realized that saying no to certain things and setting those boundaries benefited me in my personal life, it became that much easier to keep doing it. And I have not had like a bad experience from setting a personal boundary. So I think that that really is probably the biggest shift since becoming a parent. And it's really changed me as a person for the better. And I think I can show up more authentically because of that. Did I answer that whole question?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah, that is so important, and it's so hard too because I personally, and I'm sure many people, some people might not give a shit really about what other people think, but it's hard. You don't wanna like tell somebody something and think it's gonna hurt their feelings and then be looked at as a bad guy, and it really, really is tough. But yeah, I mean, it's so important to be able to speak that truth from yourself, and like you said, you saw so many benefits yourself too of
Yeah.
how you were able to show up for it. But yeah, super important. You,
Like,
you gotta set those
I
boundaries.
stopped trying to, like I think it still seems like I have my hands in a lot of different pots, which I usually do, but I think I stopped trying to do all the things at the same time. Like, I'm okay with putting something on the back burner to pour my focus into something else instead of trying to do, working on the planners while also like trying to set up a lease for like a rental tenant or, working on my website because I want to see some updates instead of like trying to do all of those same things and having a million windows open, tabs open. I'm just focusing on one thing at a time, whether it's my planners, it's real estate, it's my job, or it's my son or my family. It's just very compartmentalized now. Like, I've really honed in on that, on, like, just, like, keeping things separate because I also realized that there's no balance when you try and do all of those things. There's really no you're never gonna find balance in trying to do a million things at once, and you're just gonna do all of those things, like, half-assed, essentially. Like, why not pour everything into one thing and do really good at it?
And how poetic too that it led to the planners. Like it's perfect organization. It's
Yeah.
That's the epitome of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful.
And that's the other thing, like you said too, with the multiple things at once that I've noticed over the last 5 years that I tended to have the same habit. And I think everybody getting into doing something for themselves probably does as well, because you want to see return immediately. And I think in business and anything entrepreneur wise, like to just know that things are going to take time and that you're not always going to get a financial return on something, taking like the little victories is so, so important, and being able to really compartmentalize, like you said, and focus on one thing at a time. Because yeah, it's just kind of in our nature as humans to want to do everything and do all these things and be the best at all of these things. But the people that are the best at their trade, whatever it is, sports, business, whatever, they put so much time into that. And I forget what the saying is, like 100,000 hours or something that you have to do
Yeah,
something to
I
become a
know.
professional.
Yeah,
Y-
yeah, I know what
Yeah.
you're talking about.
Yeah, but just being able to really like put that time and put that focus into one thing and become an expert in it. And whether that is your full passion or whether it's something that you think you really like, and then that's going to lead to your full passion. I think that's really important. So
Yeah.
I like that advice.
Thanks.
All right. Well, what are some other things that you do like day to day to remain grounded? If you don't mind giving us a sneak peek into your routine and whether it's like exercise or meditation, or it seems like pretty much every guest that I have on does something different. And I think that it's really important to for listeners to hear the different things because I'm sure as listeners, they're doing their own things as well. So hearing the differences of things to just keep people grounded, I think is really important. So if you don't mind sharing that.
Yeah. This past year I started journaling a lot, which has been really helpful. I just keep like a bunch of extra note pages, like blank note pages in my planner. So like if I'm out or something, I can journal. If I have thoughts, I put them down because I would always kind of internalize them and then I would overwhelm myself one way or another. So I definitely journaling has helped. And it's not just like before bed. I will journal before bed or sometimes in the morning, but I hear a lot of people that are like, just journal before bed and that's all you have to do. But I've noticed that writing things down throughout the day, whether it's in my notebook or on a piece of paper or a napkin, like just getting things out has really helped me. I think exercise, definitely. I wanted to like try and get in the gym more, didn't really work out. I have a small gym that I kind of built slowly over the past few years in my garage. I try and get in there if I can to like lift heavy weight. But if I can't do those things, I take the steps going up to my office at work. I park a little bit further from the hotel and I walk. Waking up a little bit extra, like early, maybe like an hour before my son usually gets up because I can't if I put him to bed, I don't know if you can relate. Most parents probably can. After you put your kid to bed, you usually probably have a list of things that you want to do. But 9 times out of 10, once your kid's asleep and you're laying next to them or you're watching them sleep while they're, still kind of fussy in their room, it's really difficult to get back up and start like, you have to go back out into the kitchen or the living room to these bright lights shining in your face, and you're like, "Whoa," like, what happened to the last hour?" It's 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. You don't feel like doing any of the things that you wanted to do before you went to go put your kid to sleep, so I kinda gave up. Not gave up with it, but I stopped stressing out about whether or not I was going to get things done at night after I put my son to sleep. Instead, I wake up a little bit extra early in the morning, and I find that that's takes a little bit more discipline, I think, waking up earlier, especially when you have to go to work afterwards. But I find it that it's easier to carve out the time in the morning than it is in the evening. And I really do prioritize my sleep. So I think just allowing myself to go to bed when I'm tired is really helpful. And then just waking up refreshed and ready to go and to kind of tackle the day.
I can relate to the nighttime thing
Yeah.
for sure because I have no energy to do any as much as I want to be productive at night. It's so hard. Mornings are just so much easier. And the guest that I had on last week too shared a little bit kind of about like the science behind that and like why mornings are so much better than nights. But I absolutely feel and have always felt that way. It's like nighttime is just so hard to do it. And it's so much easier just to well, not easier, but just to be disciplined and to get used to it, to get your internal clock
Yeah,
used to getting up early and then start all those things. It's
absolutely.
yeah, changes everything.
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
I got one more question for you.
Okay.
The same question that I ask everybody, all the guests that come on to close out. If you have one piece of advice that you could leave listeners, whether that is a mindset tip or a practical parenting tip, what would that be and why?
I guess it would filter more into a mindset tip. This really doesn't have anything to do with anything we really talked about today, but it's something that recently I've become a little bit more aware of is that when you ask somebody how they're doing, ask it with like intention. Like, how are you really doing? How are you really? Or if they say, "Oh, I'm good," you're like, or is everything good? Like really ask and be present with them because I think these days everybody's so good at hiding things, like putting on a front or whether it's in real life, at work, on social media. I think everyone's really good at hiding things and everyone's really good at carrying things that maybe they don't have to carry by themselves. So for me, at least, it's been really rewarding to almost give people the chance to say how they're really feeling. And I think it's like such a simple thing and it's something that you do almost every day, but it's just become such like a habit to just be like, how are you? Good. How are you? Good. That's it. Like that doesn't even mean anything anymore. Like so like for me, my biggest piece of advice for even asking your kid, like it goes down, I guess I can relate to parenting. My son can't really form full sentences yet. But even with your children, when you ask them how their day at school was, like how was it really? Like what did you do? How did it today make you feel? Really asking things like that with intention has to be like my biggest piece of advice because it's something that I wish I would have started doing years ago. Even as a kid, as a teenager, I wish I would have started that. Yeah. That's my biggest piece of advice.
I love that. Yeah, that's really impactful to even if you ask 100 people and that one person just pops up and when you really dive into that question, then it was so worth it. But yeah, I love that. It's really hard to have the deep conversations nowadays, and people are so reluctant to share by thinking that they're gonna throw their baggage on you.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah,
it just
everybody's
being
carrying something. Everyone has has some type of they're feeling some type of pressure from somewhere, whether it's to act a certain way, dress a certain way, talk a certain way, feel a certain way, even men and women, like a man is probably a lot less likely to tell you how he's really feeling than a woman. And that's just how it is. So I think that there's always that pressure, So I think just being able to try and relieve that pressure for somebody that they can kind of have the floor and just be real about their emotions is really can really it could change somebody's life.
yeah, yeah, getting to know the person behind the person that they put up.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a game changer.
Exactly. Exactly.
This was really fun. It was really fun to
Well,
connect again, and I love just hearing the updates, love hearing what you're up to. Because like you said at the beginning, all your friends joke about all the things that you're doing. Even back then, you were up to some kind of something, and
yeah.
yeah, here you are still doing it.
Yeah.
So I love it.
It was so good to catch up.
Yeah, well, keep doing all those things for sure. And for people that are listening that wanna find you, I know do you still doing the podcast pretty actively or?
When I feel like it, it's like a really fun little outlet for me. Like when I want to like share some life lessons or things that I've learned as a mom or in relationships, like I just put it out there. So it's really as I go, it's pretty easy to record them and upload them. So I do that and yeah, so I have my podcast. It's called 4 Minute Fuel. They're really short. Usually they're under like 4 minutes, 6 minutes, but they're really quick. So I have that. I'm on Instagram at Caskia, Caskia. And then I have my website, which is caskiarosas.com. I'll send you links.
Yes, definitely do. I'll put them in the notes so people can find you. But get yourself one of those planners if you're listening.
Yeah.
Telling you, they're
Yeah.
sick.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Cassia. It was awesome connecting, and yeah, appreciate you making the time today.
Thank you, Tyler. It's great.
All right, much love, everybody.
Great.
See you next time.